Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Education Series produced by the Australian Fitness Academy. It's like progressive overload for your brain. This week's episode, shout out to Mel for this week's episode. She's interested in training her glutes, growing her glutes. So I thought I'd bring Becc in.
Yes.
Hey Becc.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Beck's our resident glute expert here at AFA.
I think it's just because I enjoy training glutes, maybe it's a bit too often.
Excellent. So always good to get another insight. We've had, what were you on for previously, Becc? Can you remember that
Was it
topic?
nutrition? I know I did nutrition.
Yep.
I can't remember what else we discussed.
We discussed a lot.
Yeah.
Yep. So Beck's been here. Well, we went through your background in the previous podcast.
Yep.
So I'll put a link to the previous episode I did with Becc in the link. So if you want to listen to another episode with Becc, click the link.
Click the link and listen to me chat away.
Yeah, keep it on
See how many tangents I can go on.
That's what we love here on this podcast anyway, so that's good. But yeah, this week's episode, glute training. Common theme that comes up a lot these days in terms of training glutes. Definitely more of a female, I would say, orientated training goal.
Yes. Yeah.
Men, we like biceps.
Yep.
Females these days like training glutes.
Yeah, everyone wants bigger glutes, I guess. It seems to be. I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of females out there tend to be chasing that bigger glutes, stronger glutes as well.
Strong glutes and I think males can also take a lot from glute training as well in terms of performance and posture and just maintaining everyday function later on in life. I think glutes are a massive part, and obviously we have glutes in a lot of exercises, which we'll talk about. But yeah, having a focus on training glutes, not only female but also males, it's important to understand different concepts and know how to do these exercises so you can maximize your functionality throughout your whole program.
Yep. And I think I definitely started with my glute training just solely focused on hypertrophy and getting bigger glutes. But, it has definitely turned into over the last couple of years into function performance. And also for when I get older, I want to be more stable. I want my balance to be better. So I guess I kind of have switched, or I guess my understanding of that I don't just have to have bigger glutes. Functionally, I'll be able to hopefully perform and move better as well.
Awesome. All right, give us a bit of a breakdown of the glutes. Becc, rough breakdown. What have we got?
Breakdown, so talking about the muscles?
Yeah, the muscles,
Muscles, we've got our glute max, so that's the big one. And I guess when everyone thinks of training glutes, they're probably more so referring to their glute max.
Yep.
We've got our glute medius, so that is probably a muscle that I consider is some way, I guess, underrated and sometimes underutilized muscle.
Yep.
So, and then we've got the glute minimus. I always kind of seem to forget about the minimus.
Yeah, I know. They're definitely different muscles, the glute medius and glute minimus, but I just sort of think about them as sort of the stabilizers.
Yeah. I think the glute max is the main driver and the one that we do always refer to. But I do think that the glute medius does play definitely an important role, especially in that stability as well. Through the hips.
Yep, cool. So I think, I find those smaller ones, the glute medius and glute minimus, are really important for single leg stability.
Yep.
Which all my sort of training, if I'm talking about glutes and stability, it's like running, sprinting, jumping off one leg.
Yep.
The more stability you have in your glutes, the more force you're going to be able to put through the ground in one leg without sort of losing force in the wrong direction.
Yep. Yeah.
So that stability gets really important.
Yep.
All right. So say there's a female, have you had clients in the past, Becc, that have sort of their focus has been to grow glutes?
Yes. So I definitely went through a big period through my life, and I feel like it was definitely after COVID where a lot of my clients were coming to me wanting to grow bigger glutes.
Yep.
I don't know if maybe it was going more of I think it was trending in that direction during that time. So for quite a few years, that was basically my clientele. Was training female clients mostly to grow bigger, stronger glutes.
Awesome. So what are some main things you would sort of put in their program or do in their program to make this sort of a focus or to help them actually achieve this goal?
Yeah, so all of my clients always had programs that they did either outside of their PT sessions or if they were just doing programs solely. If their goal was to grow glutes, they were training 2 to 3 sessions per week, being glute focused sessions. with these sessions, I guess, movement patterns, I was ensuring that they were covering all different movement patterns or planes of motion.
Yep, cool.
So there would be a hip hinge movement, whether it be a hip thrust, an RDL, a back extension, as an example.
Yep.
They would have some form of abduction exercise, so like a cable abduction,
Yep.
a banded walk, a clam, something along the lines of that.
Yep.
Along with single leg movements, so there could be a squat, lunge, Bulgarian split squat. I just called a squat a single leg movement.
That's all right. No, there's a lot going on.
You get what I mean?
Yeah, no,
So
100%.
single leg movement, a lunge, a Bulgarian split squat,
Yep.
or a step up. I tend to pick what I would call a prime movement that they begin with.
Yep.
So their prime movement for a session could be a squat. It
Yep.
could be a hip thrust, and that would be their main, I guess, focus for that session.
Cool.
And then there would be accessory work along with that. And my accessory, it could be single leg movement. Why have I lost my words? Cable
stuff.
kickback,
Yeah,
cable
cool.
stuff. So hopefully it gives like a bit of a breakdown into how I would
Structure it. So generally, would there 2 to 3 times a week, I think, is an important one. So, and that's sort of good general advice for any hypertrophy goal for any muscle group, I think, is making sure you're training it 2 to 3 times per week. If you're doing less than that, you're probably not going to see as good results.
Yep.
So I think that's a really good key. Did you generally do like lower body days, like a lower body, upper body, or did you sort of do glutes and a little bit of upper body and just keep it mainly glute?
So I did mostly as a bit of an example. So someone was training with me, maybe it could be 4 days, or this could also work for 5, is they would do a lower body day, an upper body day, a lower body day, and an upper body day.
Yep.
Or a posterior day for the third
cool.
leg session.
Yep.
So just depending on if they were wanting to do 4 days, it might look something like on Monday they're training lower body, on Tuesday they're doing upper body, on Wednesday they're having a rest day.
Yep.
Then on Thursday they're doing lower body, Friday they're having another rest day, and Saturday they're doing posterior. Just as a bit of like an example of how if they're only training 4 days, but now we're kind of hitting glutes potentially 3 times a week.
Weeks. Yeah, very
that
cool.
third session where it's posterior has a little bit of, I guess, what I would consider back in there as well. So back, hamstrings, glutes, that day would be. So it's not too much glutes in one session, but they're still able to target that over multiple sessions. Because I did find that sometimes training it too much, they weren't recovering between as well. So I think that's also important to see how your client is recovering between those sessions and allowing enough time between sessions as well.
Yeah, I think recovery is a big thing to consider with glute training. I know in my training, and I want to go out and do a session with a lot of the girls out here and do some glutes, because a lot of all my glute training is basically either it's a deadlift or it's a back squat.
Yep.
And these are potentially, Becc can tell me, good exercise for glutes.
Yep.
But they also use obviously quads and are quite fatiguing exercises in terms of full body stability and holding generally a lot of weight. So they're not necessarily easy to recover from.
Yep.
So if I was trying to do glutes every 3 times a week and I was trying to deadlift or squat 3 times a week, it's probably not going to be feasible in terms of getting all my glute volume in there.
Yes, yeah. And I think then spreading them out too. So I would have, say, a client complete a deadlift session.
Yep.
So they might have deadlifts as their main
lift. Yep.
Their main lift. And then that might be partnered with then going into a more glute specific exercises.
Yep.
And then on another day, so this would potentially be 8 hours to 72 even.
Yep.
They've then got a squat day moving into some more glute focused exercise. So splitting them at either end of the week sometimes too. So giving a little bit more recovery time between those movements.
I think very important. I think, some of those even those cable kickbacks and things like that, good for glutes, in terms of compared to say, how did you rate, compared to we'll get to hip thrust, I think, eventually, but hip thrust versus a cable kickback, what do you think? Or do you look at glute as a hip thrust as a main lift and kickback as an accessory?
Yep. So I would, and it all comes down to, I guess as well, how much time does a client have to train and what are they getting from that session too?
Yep.
So if a client maybe only had 45 minutes to train, I want to get them getting in there and getting those big lifts
Yep.
completed, done.
Yep.
I want to see them progressing, increasing their weight, doing it with
Cool.
good technique and form.
Yep.
And I would have those as priority before adding what I kind of almost call it's an isolation, a kickback.
Yep.
So that would be towards the end of their session.
Yeah.
But I do find like the kickback can be good, but I personally don't believe it builds glutes.
Yep.
I think it's a good addition to your glute training, but I would be if I was using the cable, I'd be doing more of an abduction on the cable.
Yeah. Yep.
Over
Nice.
an actual kickback.
Yeah.
I would utilize probably the hip thrust, I reckon, or a back extension.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I think it's good to sort of touch on like how I sort of asked about what exercises are good, and you're like, well, it depends on the client, because I
Yep.
think that's a big thing these days too. Is even if it's like if I want a glute focus or I want a bigger bench press or whatever your goal is, it's not going to be the same for every client.
Yeah.
Like just
Yep.
because you say, oh, yep, I've had a lot of clients do glute training.
Yep.
I'm sure every client's program is different based on how many days and how long.
How many days, and if they really disliked an exercise.
Yeah.
Like I had clients that hated hip thrusts. They hated them.
Yep.
So
Let's talk about that's a good
yeah,
lead
there
into
was-
hip
there
thrust,
was-
because hip thrust's a big exercise these
they're a
days. It's
big
getting more
exercise.
and more
like
popular.
people always I guess you have the comment of Brett Contreras, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly. But he always said like his main thing was to thrust is a must.
Yep.
So I guess when I first started off I believe that everyone had to hip thrust. If you want to grow glutes, you have to hip thrust.
Yep.
And even myself, I was like, I want to grow glutes. I need to be hip thrusting 2-3 times a week. But I think when it comes down to exercise selection as well, if a client really doesn't like a movement, you could find out why they might not like it.
Yep.
It could be that they aren't feeling it correctly. And if that is, then teach them to do it correctly. But
Yep.
some people really just don't like hip thrust. Some of my clients, I asked why, and they were like, I hate setting up the bar and loading it.
It's a big,
And that
a
was a
common
big one.
issue, I think.
Yeah,
It's just
that
because
was a
I'm
common-
sort of the same. Like, I think hip thrusts are an amazing amazing exercise, but for me, it just seems like a hassle to set up. Once I set it up, that's not that bad.
Yeah,
But
but it's the whole getting it set up. It requires a lot of effort.
Yep.
And sometimes you've set it up and you're like, okay, now I'm fatigued, I'm tired. I'm
Yeah.
done. So I think where it has been good now is some of those hip thrust machines.
Absolutely. I think the
Or
more
you
gyms that can get hip thrust
Yeah.
machines or a dedicated place where this is the hip thrust
Yep.
bench or setup.
Yep. So
Yeah,
much easier
absolutely.
to then to do. Or utilizing a Smith machine as another alternative
Yep.
has been a really good option that I was able to add into clients' programs to get them hip thrusting. But if they still didn't like it,
Yep.
I'm going to get them doing something else that they're going to perform well,
Yep.
do well, and then hopefully still grow their
Still
glutes.
grow their glutes. So do you think the hip thrust is a must? What do you think?
I have had clients see glute growth without doing a hip thrust.
Yep.
I had a client just become really strong and good at RDLs and like back extensions. They were like
Yep.
some of her main lifts within her programs.
Cool.
She wasn't sometimes the best at maybe squatting, like wasn't able to get good range.
Yep.
So we utilized things like leg presses, single leg press, lunges, Bulgarian split squats, and we were able to see some good glute growth. So I kind of don't think, and I know Brett Contreras has so many studies on this, but genetics does play a big role. into that
Yeah,
as
that's a
well.
great point to
So
make.
I think it's still hard to kind of where is hip thrusting making the difference, or is it just genetics
Yep.
and that they really enjoy that exercise too? So there's a bit to unpack when
There
it comes
is.
to,
I think that's really cool, actually.
glute training.
Yeah, because if they don't love the exercise and you give them hip thrust for 2 years,
Yep.
if they don't love it, they're probably not going to get the most out of it, are
Yeah.
they? Like you
Yeah,
sort of
and
said.
that's exactly right.
that's
They're not going to progress on that exercise.
Yeah.
They're probably going into the gym every time going, I've got these hip thrusts and I hate doing these. I've got to set up this bar and it's really heavy and it takes me ages and
Yep.
I'm exhausted. That they don't progress in weight. They're not getting stronger, so they're not seeing...
Yeah, I think that's a cool point in terms of, we'll talk about, I think progression and exercise selection are both important.
Yep.
But progressive overload and being able to lift heavier and heavier is probably key to growing
Yeah. Yep.
growing any muscle, but all
Yeah,
the glutes
yep.
as well.
But definitely glutes. I find, and a lot of the time I would not kind of change a client's goal, but they would come to me, they're wanting to grow glutes, and
Yep.
I would change it to let's just get strong.
Yeah.
So they enjoy the actual process
Yep.
of growing glutes because they hit the movements correctly. So teach them how to do it correctly with good form,
Yep.
then build some strength and just nail the basics. You
Yep.
do not have to do anything fancy. Just the basics work. Stick to the
Yeah.
basics. That's what I always say with everyone.
That's really cool. I think, yeah, if you've never had a PT or a coach before and you're looking to get into hip thrusts or training glutes, which is generally going to be a large lower body movement, it's great place to start with a PT because they'll teach you how to do it properly, but also get stronger at it. I think people potentially, obviously beginners definitely start light, but you can actually, like, exercise like the hip thrust, you'd be surprised how much people actually can put on the bar.
Yeah, yep.
How much do you hip thrust back off the top of your head?
Just kind of put the hip thrust back into my program at the moment, and the last night I did 130 for 10 reps.
Unreal.
So, and the previous week I did 130 for like 8. So I got an extra couple of reps in there, so I was happy with that. But I think, gotten it up to close to 200.
Yeah, that's
maybe. But then that's where it gets like, it's a lot of work to put that bar away, put all those weights away. So that's always a really good one if I had a PT there to help me.
Yes, absolutely. But I think that shows like how heavy, like the glute hip thrust is an isolation exercise for the glutes, but they're such a big, strong muscle that probably another, like to grow the glutes, you have to be pushing relatively heavy weights close to failure. So if you're doing your hip thrusts for 30 reps or you're doing a weight with 30 reps, it's probably not going to get the results you want.
Yes, yep.
So like you said, getting stronger should be probably a side goal or pushing your client towards, hey, it's a good way to measure progress, I reckon.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good way to measure progress, see them increasing their lifts in the gym, and then hopefully they've done some photos at the same time and seeing some changes in the glutes as well.
Very cool. So yeah, progressive overload, very important to make sure you are growing, I think. Exercise selection. What else do we have, Becc? Activation. We see a lot of people doing glute activation before squats, and I definitely do my own activation. Should you be do you need like activating glutes?
I personally always activate before I train really any muscle group, but I think it's I feel it's quite important in glutes, especially some of those bigger lifts. Like before I squat, I'm not just getting under the bar and squatting. I'm probably working on externally, like doing some external rotations, lateral banded walks, even some hip thrusts to get my glute max on as well before squatting, because I do find that I get a lot more from it. I can feel my glutes fire up straight away in the squat when I have, I guess, warmed them up and pre-activated them prior to going in and doing it. I don't think you need to do too much because then we start fatiguing them.
Cool. That's a very good point.
With heaps of reps. So you don't want to be doing, 20, 15 reps over and over again. And then you go into a big heavy lift and you're already fatigued. So you're not getting the most out of that exercise as well.
Very cool. I think that's, good. I think activation, it's integrated into the warm-up, I think, these days, and it does help you sort of move better, feel better. So when you do the lift, you can probably maximise your output and, get the best results.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome, Becc. So let's just finish with top tips for growing glutes. What do we think?
Top tips, train your glutes in, I guess, all different angles.
Oh, yes, all different angles.
That would be mine. So we don't just want to be doing... I'm trying to think of an example, like just like a squat kind of pattern, like so want to be training in all different movement patterns for your glutes. I would also prioritize just getting strong in glutes, nailing the basics when it comes to training glutes. So get really good at squatting, get strong at squatting or leg pressing could be. Incorporate some single leg movements and get good either if it's the hip thrust or the RDL.
Yeah, hip thrust or RDL. I think getting stronger in the big lifts is a really good point. So don't go out there and do 30 cable kickbacks and get a big burn. Get a really
the abduction machine or something. I see people like repping out heaps of reps on the abductor machine. That's a good one towards the end of a workout. It could be even something that someone might utilize quite light at the start as an activation if they didn't have a band.
Cool.
I'm trying to think of any other tips.
No, I think that's a great tip is, do your those big lower body lifts, like the hip thrusts, RDLs, squats, or even like split squats with weight. Do them for sort of, sets of, what rep range would you generally?
Rep range, I would say anywhere between like 6 to maybe 10.
Awesome.
Could go. I don't generally go 12. Too many reps for me.
Absolutely.
I kind of stay towards the end. I like getting strong. And I also like seeing my clients get strong. So, personally for me, I was always around that 6 to 8, potentially 10.
Yeah.
But on those bigger lifts, it was more that 6 to 8.
Yeah, I think that
range.
helps pushing like the motor unit recruitment and getting the muscle engaged, especially for a big muscle like the glute. You need to sort of force it with heavy
Yep.
weights to actually activate. So
Yeah.
very cool. Well, thanks for jumping on, Becc.
Yeah, no worries. I hope some of those tips help someone out there,
Oh, I'm
either help you or help your clients with
Yep.
growing some glutes.
Perfect. Loved it. If you do have any questions for me or Becc, or any thoughts or any questions on glutes, send an email to tom@afa.com.au. We can get back on. We can do a follow episode. So yeah,
Yeah.
hope you enjoyed the episode, guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.